movement, um, what that brought forward. So I think I'm lacking in that NFL gene, but I do want to take a moment to share or acknowledge or bring in the sentiment of potentially 96 million people right now watching that game, because we share something important with them. We share a common wish to feel vitally alive, to feel vitally alive, to leave the ordinary, to enter into the edge of our seat, moment to moment experience of not knowing. The longing to experience ourselves as one body, one body. I heard an interview this week with Irish poet John O'Donoghue, and he said that something like this, that religion is something that keeps you wide awake so that you can ask the hard questions, something to keep you wide awake. I thought that was a great definition of religion. That's the religion I want to practice in, to ask the hard questions. And I learned of a book he had written. I don't have it, but it is called To Bless the Space Between Us. It's a collection of blessings, to bless the space between us. And as I heard that title, it stayed with me and kind of has woven its way into this talk. So I want to move into our Bodhisattva precepts. One is we at Zen West are in the midst, right in the middle of our 10-week study period. We take up every new year about the precepts, and also that we are anticipating our March sesshin, which will be resting in the precept commentary. And I want to start, for those who might not be familiar, hopefully as I get towards the end, there might be some resonance. I know many of you know these precepts and have received them. The reason I want to call attention to them is, on some level, many of us who are familiar with them get past the stage of the do's and don'ts. We understand that they are not do's and don'ts that are constricting, but they're contextual and alive and living. But there's another portal to enter, and that is really understanding what it means to receive them, what they're really asking of us. And I hope to point to that tonight. So I want to say something about how we can hold them as a whole, how we can hold the precepts, and then move into one commentary at the end of the talk. I think these precepts are asking us to enter into a very profound and honest love of the world, very challenging love of this world, and to really examine this space between us, to really examine it, where we begin. And as I look in my own experience, it's summed up like this: there is an enormous dilemma to being human. It's simply explained. I have an experience of Seido. I have an interiority and a heart and a history, a rich experience that is complex and ongoing. And you over there are having your ongoing experience that is rich and complex and deep. But I cannot know yours. There is a space between us, a space that at once we pad and hide behind and long to end. This is a dilemma of being human, to see into this space. The precepts ask us to embrace all beings as ourselves. Not the golden rule to do unto others as we would do unto ourselves, to do unto others as ourselves, as ourselves. This is an enormous challenge for any of us. It must require a kind of tenderness to our immediate experience, because it says there can be no othering. There can be no objectifying others, or these precepts are not fulfilled. So this honest love of the world is not sentimental kind of love. It's a really courageous love. It acknowledges this space between, and it makes a choice. The precepts choose respect over blame. They ask us to choose generosity over meanness. They ask us to choose truth over convenient lies. This is adult practice. And we might think that these guidelines, once we rest in them and receive them, make us safe. Finally, we can feel good about our lives in some way, or have some boundaries. And sometimes they do serve that purpose. But from that place, we take another step. And that step is into a risk. To let go of sleepwalking in life, and to let the world in. To look into this space between us. They are not about self-judgment or any kind of achievement. And they are not about being a good Buddhist at all. They're not about being a good Buddhist. They are about being Buddha. And to be Buddha, we must be intimate with all beings. Precepts, if we follow them, if we take them into our heart and really receive them, they take us by the hand into a clearing, a place that is open and raw and creative and inspired. And contrary to what our ego wants, it's a place that's actually okay to feel pain. It is okay to grieve. It is okay not to know. And that's hard. I find that hard. I'm thinking of Mushin and I attended a lecture a couple of nights ago by a Dr. Fanny Brewster. She's a Black woman psychoanalyst in the Jungian tradition. Really beautiful. And I was struck by her comment on how in our racial strife and our dividedness, how important, she said, honesty was, and the role of confession, how we have yet as a culture to look one another deeply in the eyes. Where is the space for that? To see the grief, to see the pain, and to see being seen. That has not yet happened. The white identified community that I belong to has not said it's okay yet to feel pain. It's not okay to know the truth. And collectively, we are still at the place of defending our good intentions, collectively. And we miss the needed work that the precepts point to, this raw honesty. That's how we can hold these precepts. But I want to move into one of my favorite commentaries in our translation. I think Mushin said you were adopting some of the Bodhidharma Dogen commentaries that are so beautiful and beguiling. When I first came to practice and read these, recited them, and took them, not quite knowing what I was getting into in many ways, this is the commentary that stood out. And at first I really had no idea what it meant, but I felt like I did somewhere. It's the commentary that goes on with the precept of not indulging anger, but really it could be a commentary for all the grave precepts. And it goes like this: not contriving reality for the self, not advancing, not retreating, not real, not empty. There is a brilliant sea of clouds. There is a dignified sea of clouds. There's a brilliant sea of clouds. There's a dignified sea of clouds. When I heard that line, I had no idea what that could possibly mean. It was so interesting to me that I was about to take on this religious practice with words like that. So the zazen we take up sees directly into the truth of those lines. But I want to come back to the first two couplets, because they really are how we practice. This commentary could be a mantra for us day to day. When we come to Zen, immediately we are studying how we are contriving reality for the self. I love to read psychological literature and neuroscientist studies that are so revealing to what we come to know direct in Buddhist practice. You know, every time we walk into a room, and even this Zoom room, we are contriving reality for the self based on our perceptions in this moment are being attracted to certain faces and not others. We have unconscious stories about some and not others, and stories about ourselves that are all at play, that are directing what we take in and what we reject as reality. And in the center of that story is this separate identity. It's what goes on in our dream life. In this recent interview with a neuroscientist, Dan Levitin, I think his name is, there was a mention about a study which I found hilarious, where people were asked to watch a video clip of 6 people playing basketball. And they were told, when watching this basketball game, to pay attention to the people in the white shirts and see how many times they pass the ball. And so they had these people watch this clip. But unbeknownst, they weren't told this, is that in the middle of the basketball game, a gorilla comes on, someone in a full gorilla suit, and beats their chest for 9 seconds and then leaves the screen. And after watching this clip, 50% of the people did not see the gorilla. 50% of the people. It's amazing. And studies like this all show we are crafting what we take in and how we weave it together. Our expectations condition the next moment, what I expect to see, what I don't expect to see. So some of that is just psychological reality of how our mind works. But what Buddhism is concerned about is the grasping on the I that's at the center of that, and the creating of karmic conditioning that moves us forward, that creates suffering. To sit zazen is to begin to open up, right? We let go of expectations and preferences moment to moment. We begin to open up and start taking in all this information that we normally screen out. We create a little bit of space, and that gap between us starts to close. We study the self to forget the self. So not contriving means to slow down and look again. We won't eliminate all of those conditioned impulses, but we can transform our attachment to them. Okay. This next line, not advancing, not retreating, not advancing. Once we've created this separate self, there's a dilemma there. I like and I don't like. I want certain things and I don't want other conditions. Our world of grasping and aversion, our fixing, our escaping, And we can study that in practice as well. And before I came to practice, I would have probably insisted that there was no other way to navigate a life. How could you navigate a life without having that? How would you feed yourself and take care of your life if you didn't have all these likes and dislikes? But something beautiful happens in Zazen again. It shows us that there's another way to navigate life, not from that direction. To navigate life from presence, from a centered, open, responsive, present mind, responding, embedded, listening. That's that creative, inspired space. It's a space of not knowing. It's a space of being on the edge of the seat, where it's okay to feel pain and to move in a way that's responsive, that lets go of our preferences. And that space of not knowing, interestingly enough, closes the space between us when we are not knowing together. And we experience that in practice, like this space. I think of this, I come back again to the huge, enormous existential crises we face as human beings. The world on fire, extinction, climate disruption, the fragmentation of our society. There's rarely a space with those situations for us as humans to be in the room together, to be present with each other without knowing. It's rare to be breathing and present, to not know together how to solve this problem. That's rich. The next couplet says, moves from there, not real, not empty. Not real, not empty. Not real is what we discover when we come to practice. But the stories that we weave through our moment-to-moment experience are very flimsy and ephemeral, that they don't quite match our experience, that they change, and we release them. It doesn't mean we don't have them. We stop to cling to them. We stop to use them to buffer life from feeling. But the other part of this is not empty. Doesn't mean that we lose the distinctions in the world before us. Not real, not empty. What's left? Just a movement, just this. So I come back to those most beautiful lines, which I hope might travel with you. You can carry them for a lifetime. There is a brilliant sea of clouds. There is a dignified sea of clouds. That line departs from the instructions in the previous couplets. It leaps right out and beyond them. It is directly transmitting Buddha's mind. It is pointing to the view. It needs no explanation, but I will give some. Brilliant sea of clouds. In Buddhism, clouds are often an image of what blocks the blue sky, what blocks our view. Originally called cataracts in the mind, right? To see with a distorted view. But this line says, there's a brilliant sea of clouds. There's a dignified sea of clouds. What is a cloud? Been doing a lot of cloud watching lately in this weather. something that we cannot grasp, an amazing appearance. Any cloud watchers know that, right? They don't stay the same. If you watch one, they begin to move and transform. All of a sudden, the big elephant turns into a lion and then a banana, and it's gone. Brilliant sea of clouds. To live this Buddhist life means to not be fooled by appearances. We are that sea of clouds, here, now. To not be fooled by them, but to respect them. To respect the appearance of the world before us in its dignity and ungraspability. From that point of view, I can hold, yes, you look like you're out there, and I imagine I'm in here, but that is part of the clouds. To realize these lines dissolves the gap between us. We can respect and embrace this dream life and move accordingly, not be fooled. It brings forth a kind of wonder in the same way that we wonder at the sky, the clouds, the stars. We wonder in a way how these beautiful sea of clouds catch and refract the light. That's what Buddha sees, the light in each being. So I'll just close with this paradox because it's important not to fall on either side. That loving the world means that we serve a cloud world as cloud bodies, and we take it seriously. It's important not to make light when we use the word clouds, because if we do see into our condition and the ephemeralness of our mental stream, then the only thing to do is this practice, is to practice. Because even though the clouds are ephemeral, the suffering is not. The suffering that is enacted are consequences from taking the clouds to be real and not seeing into the true way we exist and the mystery of that, to missing this life that's happening right now. We miss it. And we take the clouds as real. So I go back to the title of John O'Donoghue's book because for tonight at least, I'm going to call these precepts as a method of blessing the space between us, a way of blessing the space between us, a life that gives space to this great Buddha bowl we celebrate. Just don't miss the gorilla. That's it for tonight.
Seido, I wonder if we can open